Capital One's tech team isn't just talking about multi-agentic AI. They already deployed one, Chat Concierge for car shopping. Their tech team built in self-reflection with live API checks to help buyers find a car they love. That's how they stack. That's technology at Capital One.
Hello, business leaders, innovators, and visionaries. Welcome to this episode of Tech Stack, Inside the Innovation Engine with Fast Company. I'm your host, Rashana Bide, Fast Company Custom Studio Moderator, and we are delighted to have you with us. Customers love personalization, and every personalized, seamless customer experience you love is backed by an invisible powerhouse of tech. In this episode, Capital One's Amish Paleja pulls back the curtain on how enterprise platforms and automation fuel both innovation and speed at scale. This dynamic conversation wouldn't be possible without the incredible support of our partner, Capital One. So buckle up, because today's discussion will revolutionize how you think about your tech stack and innovating the customer experience. Joining me now in the studio is Amish Paleja, EVP and Head of Enterprise Platform Technology at Capital One. Welcome, Amish.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you, Amish. We're going to talk all about the customer experience and how that's influenced your tech stack at Capital One. Let's start with the customer experience. What is it that customers want?
Technological leaps that we've made over the last 10 years have just become so commonplace. Now when people think about, recommendations that show up on Amazon or Netflix or other applications that are kind of mainstream consumer apps, now are extending into all apps, including banking apps and medical apps, et cetera. I recently got an Oura Ring, and it's helping me track my sleep. I'm like, why isn't it giving me more insights? And it's like, oh, you need to wait 3 days before I collect enough data to be able to actually tell you the right things. And now, after 4 or 5 weeks, it's getting me to the right spot. And so basically every aspect of customers interacting with computers or phones in any way, they expect a personalized experience. And Capital One is trying to lead the way on that front with personalized experiences, our app and website.
Yeah, so it sounds like, as you mentioned, there's a lot of expectation because of how customers use tech and their experiences in other industries. Is that translating to how you're looking at the banking experience and the evolution of your tech stack?
100%. I mean, we have tons of different lines of businesses. When we think about kind of the basic banking and credit card applications, all of these are now turning into what kind of offers can we make? What kind of rewards programs can we have? How do we both internally and externally decision on behalf of our customers? And then we can layer on really interesting products like Capital One Travel and Capital One Shopping. And those become even more personalized based on your behavior and your engagement with our other product lines. And so as we kind of see the growth of personalization, it really runs down into consolidated data and consolidated platforms that help one another grow and improve dramatically. So it's a very virtuous flywheel. And as one system starts getting better, it helps uplift others. But it's hard work to get the ball rolling. So I would say customers have really high expectations. We're dead set on meeting those expectations and hopefully exceeding them. And we want to do that not only on our kind of core products, but all the new products that we build as well, and start off right out of the gates in a personalized way.
Yeah, Amish, I'm going to ask you about the technology and pull back the curtain for us, but I'm curious, while we're talking about the customers, is there one big wow or significant benefit that customers have been raving about, or something really innovative that your team has been doing?
Right now, we've been working very hard on our foundational experiences and specifically our operational resiliency. So when we think about what customers want, one of the primary things is it's always working, always on, it's always fast, and everything just simply works. As a part of that, we've modernized our SRE practices, we modernized all of our infrastructure and availability and operational processes. And I know this is a little bit away from the consumer, but really it's for the consumer. It's making sure everything is working well. So now when we think about the sheer volume of information, terabytes and terabytes of logs that are being generated every day, how do we scan them? How do we operate them? How do we look at what's happening? How do we detect smoke before it becomes fire? How do we run automated playbooks? As our business expands, as we grow, as we now have acquired Discover, and they have an amazing payment network in addition to their card business, all of these things kind of come together, and we want to make sure that everything is operating super well. So part of the wow moment for me is we are really sitting in kind of the next generation of operational excellence and well-managed reliability. That is core and foundational to everything we do at Capital One. We want to be incredibly trustworthy brokers of people's, finances. And it's an incredible responsibility, and we take it very seriously. So we start from there and work backwards.
Well, I think that it makes a lot of sense when I hear you talk about the customers and then bring in your own engineers, because it feels like it's one system that you're talking about. It seems like that's a value of your engineers to meet a great customer experience with some of the examples you even just gave us. Can you talk a little bit more about the engineers and their experience?
There's a lot of different dimensions for the engineers themselves, right? One is how they actually build software, right? So what are we doing to make their lives easier, their lives more fruitful, so they can focus on the high level judgment and creativity that they can bring to the table. Oftentimes, as companies get bigger, they tend to get stuck in the mud where their run the engine costs or keep the lights on costs keeps going up. And some of the innovations and advents of AI and better developer tools have resulted in our ability to remove some of the more mundane work off of their plates. Whether it's simply like, hey, I can automate my unit testing or my performance testing. I can automate migrations from some old version of Redis to the new version of Redis. These things always have to happen. They are a part of life and a part of business that you have to take on, but it doesn't necessarily leverage the incredible brain power that we've cultivated here at Capital One. And so, my goal for our software development lifecycle and all the developer experience tools is really to give every engineer an Iron Man suit, right? And I think that that's kind of one big piece, is give them the tools to be successful. And I think the second piece is a big cultural shift, which is focus on the things that create value and impact for our customers and our business. Oftentimes, and I'm an engineer's engineer, so like, if you want to get into a debate about, Cassandra versus Dynamo with me, I'm excited to do that. And I think it's a fun conversation. But fundamentally, those conversations are not where we're going to innovate on behalf of our customers. And what we really want to do is we want to make sure that our engineers are focused on driving value and impact in the spaces that are going to uplift our customer experience in a pretty dramatic way. So if you take the kind of combination of both of these things, it's like, how do we give our engineers the Iron Man suit, the tools, the technology, the infrastructure, the capabilities to be able to remove the low order judgment work off their plate, and then teach them what is the high order judgment, high impact, high strategic value things that they can work on that are going to provide incredible value for our customers. And so the combination of those two things is both a technological and a cultural shift that has resulted in our ability to execute in a much more thoughtful way.
Yeah, we definitely should talk about the organizational shift. And it sounds like a mindset and a modernization for your engineers. And you mentioned creativity. You mentioned, again, them thinking about the best customer experience. You also mentioned AI and a couple of tools. So I'd love to pull back the curtain a little bit. And as you empower your engineers to be superheroes, is there one particular technology or several technologies that come to mind that have been game changers for you?
Obviously, transformers and LLMs have driven a ton of value. This is such a striking moment in time. It's such a sea change moment where it feels like every 6 to 8 weeks, the industry's kind of turned on its head and there's some massive innovation or step function change. It's a little hard to put your finger on like, this is the tech that's going to take us home, because 6 weeks from now, or whenever when this podcast airs, I promise you, it's probably going to be a different answer that I give you right now. So, at the risk of avoiding the answer, I will just say I'm excited about the pace of innovation that's happening right now, and the fact that getting the boring work off of our plates and really leveraging the human brain power is the thing that is like my high order bit. That's the thing that I care about. That's the thing that I want to provide to all the thousands of engineers that are working here. I think that that's the thing that's going to unlock so much potential, because we spend a lot of time interviewing and hiring great people. it's crazy to have them doing boring work that a computer can do for them.
This is such an exciting point in time for us to have this conversation. It really is kind of a magical moment. And you also mentioned earlier convergence and converging onto an enterprise platform. What's the benefit of doing that?
The benefit is leverage. I take this. What is strategy? Strategy is where the leverage is at. Candidly speaking, when I talk to my peers who run the different technology groups for all the lines of businesses, my partnership with them is basically this: is that if you all are doing things that are repeated, give them to me, and I'll turn them into a multi-tenant platform and make it easier, faster, cheaper, and more powerful for all of you, right? So the idea of being able to, instead of building 5v1s of our A/B testing platform or our decisioning platform or our apps or websites, right? Why don't we build one V5 and get the benefit of scale and get the benefit of common data infrastructure, get the benefit of common operations, and really drive incredible long-term value. Now, this is not a free exercise. It takes time, energy, and effort, and there's a tax that you have to pay to make something a multi-tenant platform. But the reality is that in the long term, the ROI is tremendous, and the value that we can drive and create for all of our customers from a platform perspective just makes them more efficient, more powerful, and they don't need to focus on things, right? Focus on things that can be handled on behalf of them. So I would say, Capital One has a long history of, being data driven, being a platform company. And this has resulted in our ability to kind of continue to accelerate the innovation that we have, even when we're getting bigger. And that's a very kind of an unusual thing. Most companies actually slow down their innovation pace as they get bigger. Capital One is on the opposite side of that coin, where we're speeding up because we're focused on these kind of long-term investments to help us be more efficient with every resource that we have.
Amish, you're painting a picture for me, and maybe it's because I live somewhat near your headquarters that I can envision these lines of business and how you, in your role, of course, support these leaders. Capital One is such a large organization, as you mentioned. Are there standards or is there standardization that's necessary in order to enable your teams to do that creative work, to be flexible and autonomous, while also, again, having some standards?
What I would say is it's incredibly important for us to have these standards, but having standards alone isn't the answer, right? Because you could just write some document, throw it on the shelf, and hope people look at it, or maybe you don't care, right? But we do care. And so oftentimes what we try to do is, and I think we're generally successful in this, is we try to build it into the platforms themselves. So as like a simple example, our SDLC pipeline, we need to have a software bill of materials, right? We know exactly where every component library comes from, what version it is, what the data lineage is. All of these pieces are all just automated so that the standards themselves are not just simply talk. They're implemented right into the infrastructure that we have, and it's an incredibly powerful opportunity for us. Now, again, it takes time and energy to do that, but once you do it, all of a sudden, every developer in the whole company doesn't ever have to worry about these things. And so it's not just simply talk, it's action. And then, when we elevate out of kind of procedural standards and we come into like architectural standards, oftentimes what we try to do is we try to create cookbooks or templates in the infrastructure itself, so that if I say, hey, I need to create a microservice or I need a caching solution, they simply can just come to our developer portal, pick the right gear and click set up, and then all of a sudden the developers only have to focus on the business logic, right? They don't have to worry about what are my security permissions, where do I go, how many regions am I deployed to, how many availability zones am I in. All of these kind of details that normally every developer would have to learn, we can now have them focus on the business value and the customer value. And so the standards help us not only stay well managed, but Capital One has taken a lot of effort and time and energy to implement automation of those standards and giving everybody basically an easy button to use.
You're giving them an Iron Man suit and an easy button. And so now I'm putting myself in the seat of one of your engineers. The cultural shift that they might be experiencing, both in tech, of course, in banking with a lot of the standards that you have, and then a lot of the things you mentioned with respect to creativity and autonomy. What have these organizational shifts been for your team at Capital One, and how have they helped you as you've been converging onto your enterprise platforms?
The cultural shifts are typically the hardest part to navigate in a large organization like this. Capital One has 50,000 plus employees. How to shift a super tanker is very different than how to shift a little speedboat. The mechanisms in which, I've kind of worked with my peers and the rest of the leadership here is to build on wins. It's a common strategy, but can we find willing partners within the organization that we can rack up a couple of wins? And they don't necessarily have to be the biggest or most complicated use case, but if we can demonstrate that, say, hey, shift your messaging platforms over to this core unified platform, you're going to save time, energy, effort. You'll have less outages. You'll have, higher customer satisfaction, better delivery rates, et cetera. We find a willing customer, they move over, and all of a sudden their run the engine cost goes down by 5%. All of a sudden, that's a big eye-opening move. And so I tend to prefer to drive these kinds of changes based on successful deployments. And if I can't make it successful, then I probably need to fix something on my side first to make it work before I keep trying to get everybody to do it. So, I'm not a huge fan of kind of big bang migrations. I think that finding willing participants and partners that can come in and join us. And the best news at Capital One is that every team has some desire to kind of continue to innovate and grow. It just really depends on their complexity of their requirements and where we are from a platform perspective to be able to engage with them today versus tomorrow. And I think everybody is reaping the benefits now that we're really investing significantly here, that there's a large amount of engagement and excitement, not just from bottoms up from the engineers, but I would say from our board down. So it's an exciting time for the company. Like when all of these things come together and you start seeing the value and results that come out of it and the happiness for our customers and our business users, it's an exciting motivational mechanism that motivation is infectious. The rest of the company wants to be a part of that journey.
Oh, I hear what you're saying, and it feels like that need not just be for banking. Of course, this is what you're doing in your organization, but almost, building on wins and continuing to have this growth mindset. I think that's pretty transferable for life, if I may put that guru message on you. So in that light, Amish, we have just a few more minutes, and I'm really curious about your perspective on technology trends and something that you might be closely watching or that you're excited about.
Obviously, look, everybody's talking about AI, so I'm gonna pass on the AI bucket here for a second because I think you've probably heard 50 podcasts about this. The one that I'm keeping an eye on that I think is going to be another kind of sea change moment is quantum computing. The kinds of problems that it's solving, whether it's drug discovery, whether it's material science, cryptography, whether it's quantum networking is a thing, and the reality is that it is kind of the next frontier of science that I think is going to make a game-changing, sea change moment for the whole world, right? Just the same way AI is doing, just the same way the mobile phone revolution happened, the same way the internet happened, the same way the invention of electricity happened. I think this is going to be a huge deal. It's going to change people's lives in a very dramatic way. And I think that it's a little far out, but there's been significant innovations in this space. So I would say if you're intellectually curious and you're looking around the corner to say, what's next? Quantum computing is the thing that I would be really paying attention to, because I think it's going to unlock, math, science, physics, chemistry, you name it. It's going to help humanity in a pretty dramatic way.
Yeah, when you say far out, it's not that far out from a time standpoint and also not that far out from an imagination standpoint. It is here, and I think I'm kind of excited hearing you talk about it. We've had a point in time conversation, Amish, today. It was wonderful hearing your expertise and your insights. Huge shout out to you, Amish. Thank you so much for your perspectives.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
I did too. And for those of you listening, I hope you've all been able to glean some wonderful insights on empowering engineers and customers through the tech stack, and also some wonderful philosophies about what's to come. On behalf of Fast Company and our partner, Capital One, thank you again to all of you who joined us here today. Keep the conversation alive, rewatch, share, and we hope you join us for more episodes of Tech Stack inside the Innovation Engine. Until next time.